Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 regularly scheduled City Commission meeting. If you don't mind, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have a call for attendance, please?
Commissioner Pruitt?
Here.
Commissioner Witt?
Here.
Commissioner Bowles is absent. Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Mayor Staten?
Here. Before we get started with today's agenda, is there anyone in the audience who is here to bring anything before the commission that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we have a presentation on a housing project from Elevate.
Hi,
Hello.
Jody, my name.
If you don't mind.
Julie Wisher, W-I-S-C-H-E-R.
And then if you could also explain your relation to Elevate.
I am the executive director of Elevate, formerly the Hugh Edwards Sanford Training Center. We changed our name back in April as we, over the past 7 years, have moved beyond just being in our building and have attempted to be more integrated in the community. So I'm here. Let me just go ahead and go
Yes,
go
please.
into it. We have applied for $15 million of funding from the Kentucky Housing Corporation to build 48 apartments that will offer what's called permanent supportive housing for this community. Permanent supportive housing allows individuals with disabilities to live independently with modest supports. 10 of those apartments will be set aside for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a traditional population that we serve through our day training program. The other 38 will be part of the coordinated entry system, and that is part of the Green River Area Development District through Kentucky Housing, and it places people into permanent homes or apartments based on their vulnerability. So they have to have a disability that presents a barrier to them living independently. And it also factors in things like homelessness, at risk for being homeless, their current living condition, ER trips, that type of thing. So this will be the first of its kind in our region. Right now, the only other permanent supportive housing communities like this are in Louisville and Lexington. And we are competing with, I think, only 3 other organizations for these funds. We went through a training process over the past 6 months with Kentucky Housing, which allowed us kind of a separate pocket of money to pull from for this. So it'll be debt-free when it's done. We have land donated by Ben Johnston and his family over on Old Madisonville Road, very close to the East End. We'll have 24/7 staffing. We will build a new community-based services facility next to these apartments so we can offer life skills learning, work-ready learning, job placement, supported employment, and other services. And we'll have transportation that will supplement HART and GRITS.
Oh.
Any questions?
Sounds awesome. Yeah, sure does.
Go big or go home, right?
That's right. That's right. So where, I know you just said it, but can you be more descriptive as far as where we are at in the process?
Yes.
And how long it might take before we see
Yes,
some?
most definitely. We kind of started looking at the need for more housing, especially for individuals with disabilities, when we returned from COVID back in the middle of 2020. And since then, we've had 2 residential service providers leave Henderson, and some of our participants have had to move to Owensboro and beyond because there just isn't supportive housing options here in Henderson. So in a roundabout way, we ended up partnering with Bill Hollingsworth, who built the Audubon School Apartments on Clay Street, and he's going to be our developer. And we applied for this training and got in January, and our application was complete and submitted on the 14th of August. Kentucky Housing will go through all the applications and will be notified by February, which on the daily basis, I think is way too long, but it's already almost September, so I think we're gonna get there. Once we know if we're funded, that's when we hit the ground running, and we have been to the planning commission. Ben Johnston's, the land over on Old Madisonville Road is zoned as agriculture. We have a conditional rezoning pending our engineering drawings. That will happen sometime next spring, and we hope to, a year from now, be turning dirt and, you know, if the supply chain allows it, begin to build the apartments and then have move-ins about October of 2025.
You said there was 3 people in the running, 3 cities?
We're one of 4 in the community. One of them already had funding that went into this training. So there's a group out of Paducah, and there's a group out of Northern Kentucky, and then there's us. And we presented, back in July, we presented to the Secretary of Health and Family Services, Secretary Freelander, and then some other individuals. And we're the only service provider that's moving into the housing world. The others are housing organizations that are moving into the service world. The service world's the hardest part to fund and to organize and to develop. And we've spent the past 7 years building a program that is reimbursable by Medicaid. We've created a very strong relationship with our counterparts in Frankfurt. We have good annual recertifications and have a program that they send people to tour to see how to build a program that works and is comprehensive. So I think we have a pretty good, pretty competitive application with the other 3.
So they're only funding 1?
More than likely, yes, only fund 1.
Is there anything, a letter or what, recommendation from this council?
We submitted a letter to the mayor to say, hey, we're doing this, and do you know, and he submitted back. Fiscal court did the same, as well as our state representatives. We do have letters of service commitment from Deaconess, Cross Point Behavioral Health, River Valley, Health First, the FQHC out at Cabell Platte, Brightview Addiction Recovery. We will be an option, and a big option, for those who are chronically homeless or at risk of homelessness, which we know is continuing to become a more prevalent issue in our community. So we're hoping that we can be a permanent solution for some of those that may find stability in a housing situation that offers mental health supports, life skills supports, work-ready learning, and that sort of thing.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Julie, I think this project is phenomenal. I have been supportive ever since you told me about it a few months ago, and it's much needed. I just can't get over how active our individual citizens and organizations have been in improving our community these last few years. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
It has been fun to watch, and whatever we can do to continue to support you and your efforts, please let us know.
All right. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda, we have a presentation from Henderson Leadership Initiative on one of their projects. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Do you need our names?
Please, yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm
That's
so bad
okay.
at this. Yeah, if you would, please tell us your name and who you're affiliated with, and then start with your presentation. That would be great.
Perfect. I'm Kelly Douglas, one of the committee members on our group project within the Henderson Leadership Initiative.
I'm Amanda Hardy, and I'm also in the same group with Kelly with our HLI initiative.
Okay, so the reason we wanted to come today was just to kind of discuss our project that we have stumbled upon, and it's with one of the 3 roundabouts towards the high school. That will be the roundabout that I guess we'll be talking about today, figuring out a sculpture of some sort to put in the center of it that represents the whole community. And so we have kind of come across our group has come across the Colonel, the mascot of the Colonel, too, on the center of the roundabout. You know, the school system's really big on Maroon and White Fridays right now, and just hometown school spirit all around. And so we thought, since that roundabout would be closest to the high school, whether you're an out-of-towner or you're a local, chances are you're probably going to have to go through that roundabout to get to the high school. So we thought having the Colonel mascot being the center of that would be not be a bad idea. And then Amanda has some more specific information as far as the sculpture.
So we know that it can't be over 20 feet by 20 feet. That's the max of the sculpture. So what we're looking at is a 10-foot by 15, no more than that. We're looking at concrete. I spoke to a person in Kentucky that actually does concrete art, someone that I just knew, to try to get some roundabout of how we should go about all of this with information, and he definitely knew a lot more than we did about it. But basically, what he does, and you know, we would still put out the RFP, but speaking to him, he said that basically you sculpt, mold, and move. Being that it's concrete, one 5-gallon bucket of concrete equals 100 pounds. So it's very heavy. We would need to put in there that we need a concrete pad, along with, he suggested a pedestal, because if you've looked at our new Colonel, it's not the whole body, it's a half of the body. And so putting a pedestal in there would be an option, and then putting the concrete kernel on top of that. So with that, you know, concrete can also be colored, so I think there's many options to how you go about the kernel. But also, we would definitely need to invest in getting a crane to move it because it's so heavy, and possibly, you know, putting a sign at the bottom for, you know, who created that, you know, we've worked with the city, and HLI has helped with that. So basically, that's kind of what he kind of gave us a roundabout idea of what we were looking at, and then also putting lights at the bottom where it would shine up on it. We also are going to be working on our RFP really soon. We hope to have it sent out the 1st of September, and then hopefully we can have everything finalized by December. We're hoping to work with Oval and get some information and some help from them as well. And then we also have applied for a local grant to help pay for some of that. And then whatever's left, we're hoping private donors will be available. So one of the things too that we did want to come here today for is to find out if anything on our RFP that we're thinking about needs to be changed, if you all like this idea, or if there's something else out there that we need to look into.
Buzzy, can I ask you, or maybe Emily, either one, to give us a little bit more background on exactly the area that we're talking about, how much money might be available, and how this project that they're talking about fits in with that landscape?
I think Emily, she can do it.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, I would love to. Would you mind to come up, Emily, and state your name and who you work for, and tell us a little bit more about what we're hearing about?
My name's Emily Deason. I work for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. So the roundabout that she's referring to would be just east of the current I-69 overhead crossing there on 2nd Street. So where the loop ramp is, it'll be right there when you come off the loop ramp. What was the other questions? Funding availability?
Yeah. What kind of funding is available? And we kind of started in on this project, but I have a feeling, I knew what you all were coming to talk about, but I don't think the rest of the commission is as caught up to speed with what you're talking about
Sure.
than I am. So can you tell us a little bit more about what we're talking about as
Yeah.
far as an art project and a roundabout, what all this means?
Well, and Buzzy might be able to speak more toward the art project, but, you know, along this 2nd Street corridor, us as the I-69 project, we do have an allotment for streetscape money that we are working with Buzzy and a committee to allocate that streetscape money, so to make a gateway for the community. One of the 3 roundabouts, the roundabout in front of the middle school, will have a sign, a welcome to the city of Henderson sign. The other 2 roundabouts are currently vacant. They don't have anything in them, which I think is kind of where this project came from, and kind of like the genesis of it was to, you know, have some type of area to, you know, highlight either artists in the city or highlight, you know, different areas for the community. So I think that's kind of where the Henderson Leadership Initiative kind of came in, and kind of, you know, it's taken the lead on the RFP. Funding wise, at least for the state, we don't have anything besides the currently allotted streetscape money that we have given to the city to use at their disposal. So, which that's going into landscaping and the signage and lighting and you know, other amenities along that corridor, but we don't have anything currently in the state's funding for this art at this roundabout.
Gotcha. And Buzzy, can you expand on how this art might fit within the budget that we currently have allotted to us?
Well, for clarification, one thing in part of the landscape in that one roundabout that y'all are referring to, there will be a concrete pad poured with access to electricity for uplighting for whatever. I will say, Mayor, right now there is nothing in our budget cycle to fund any portion of that project, but what I would recommend that the HLI group come back with a plan once they know what their costs are and what their funding opportunities are, and then could make a request at that time.
Gotcha.
Now, Emily, the only other thing with what you've heard them propose, anything that would caution them about what they're proposing?
No, I think it all sounded reasonable. I mean, the size as far as like width and height of an art piece is very flexible inside of a roundabout. It doesn't impede sight distance. So none of that was alarming. If we are doing the concrete pad as part of, you know, our streetscape, if we needed a kind of an idea on size and depth and, you know, what type of, you know, how heavy the art piece will be. So kind of knowing that ahead of time, we'll be able to make sure that we have something adequate. So that was the only piece that I kind of had a question on.
So it'd be my recommendation to the group, it's to do your concrete artwork, but you said it would sit on a concrete pedestal. That's something that you probably need to get with Dylan Ward and myself to discuss that, because that should be maybe not part of the RFP for the sculpture, but a separate cost to get that part of it done. And there are local people in town that can do it. The question is, what do you want it to look like? And the more decorative it gets, the more expensive it gets, but the fact remains, you're going to take it from the pad up. So we're willing to help you get there with some design work.
Sounds great.
Gotcha. What kind of questions or comments do we have from the commission while we have this group in front of us?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense, especially if it's the one closest to high school.
Yeah,
I don't know
if
what
it's,
I don't know what it was, yes.
you know, it's not something I think I would have thought about.
No, I wouldn't have.
Putting there. If you were to ask me what should we put there, but I think it's not a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. The only thing that I might recommend is as you're working through it as a group, if there's any way you might come up with a couple of concepts and then seek some community input so that we can allow our community to weigh in on the exact one that you all have worked through to allow them to have some influence on it, because it is going to be a public art installation there. But I enjoy the fact that you guys are working on it. And thank you so much for putting your time and effort into it, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to bring back to us to look at.
One suggestion I would make in your RFP, and this is based on experience, if you're paying a sculptor to make this, make sure you retain the mold. In the event something happens to the statue, that you would have the mold in the future to replace it.
And then also, if you can look at the longevity of the materials that are used. And what I mean is I know you're talking about concrete, but you were also talking about colored concrete. sometimes the colored concrete fades with rain and weather over time, and sometimes pretty quickly, like within a year or two. So if we're going to do anything that's going to be there, hopefully we won't have anything that's going to be something that requires a whole lot of ongoing maintenance, stuff like that. But no, I think it sounds like a good project. I think you guys are heading in the right direction. So.
Do you have any kind of mock-up yet, or no?
No, we do not, but we're hoping that when, at the point of after getting this RFP, it would be nice to have something to show people on a smaller scale. I know after speaking to this one person, he said it is hard to do those small ones compared to the large. He said a lot of times they cost more than what they're really worth. So that's just one person's opinion though, so hopefully we'll be able to have something to go by. I did send him several pictures of the new kernel, and then just kind of wanted an idea of some of the things that he had done, and he sent me back some amazing pictures. So we've all looked over those, and there's no doubt in our minds that it can be done. It's just going through the process and getting the person.
Are you thinking, you're thinking like something that's really the same as our logo, not something, an artistic or, okay.
I mean, we really
Yeah, I
haven't.
think we're just going with which they've recently kind of redesigned the Colonel mascot now, and so we were just kind of go off of that.
Gotcha.
And it's waist up, so he doesn't have legs.
Did he send you anything back in different kind of material?
All of it was
lines?
concrete, but different products, like different colors, solid concrete. Now, and like I said, this was just one person we checked with. We had looked into bronze, and he said, if you go with bronze, you're going up in cost. He had done a horse in Louisville that was $500,000 for a horse.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. That
Better
was
be.
bronze. So, concrete, he said, would be a lot more reasonable than the other material, but that's something we can look into if that's what you all think.
Well, yeah, I would look just to check, since it's only going half a body. See, because I'm on the lines of the mayor, concrete sculptures, they tend to, like I said, a couple of years with that color and it'll fade, and you know, I'm just not a whole lot on concrete sculptures. If we can afford to get a different material so it'll last longer and no maintenance and be there quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah, we can have them price it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good deal. Like I said, I think one of the keys as you work through it is not necessarily how fast you can get it done, because we can add it whenever we can add it. It doesn't have to be there right at the beginning of when it opens. I think it's going to be more so just making sure that we solicit the community feedback, just to make sure that whatever we're going to put there is going to work out and be appreciated by our community. So.
Do you know when the roundabout will be constructed there? You know when the timeline
Will be
is?
open.
Yeah, for that specific spot?
It'll probably be operational summer of '25. We got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We're not talking,
Right.
next spring.
Sounds pretty awesome, and as you work through, as you've probably seen in the past, somebody criticizes every public art project. So
Oh, sure.
you get discouraged by that as you go through the process, but I'm excited about it. Thank you
And
for
we are
it.
hoping that Oval will help us with this. I know that the person that I spoke to had told me that he was the only concrete artist in Kentucky. So we just need to do a little bit more research on that when we send the RFPs out, but hopefully we can get local.
Good deal. Any other questions?
No.
All
Thanks for
right. Well,
taking
thank
this.
you all so much.
Thank
Thank you
you
for taking
all.
your time and put to it. All right, I think we're done with the presentation, so now we have a consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of the minutes of the August 8th, 2023 regular meeting, resolution number 49-23, resolution authorizing participation in Kentucky Pride Litter Abatement Grant Program, municipal order number 40-23, municipal order authorizing acceptance of grant in the amount of $20,000 from the Kentucky Fire Commission as part of the Training Facility Grant Program and authorizing city to execute all necessary documents. Municipal Order 41-23, municipal order authorizing acceptance of grant of highway safety grant in the amount of $18,000 from the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's Kentucky Office of Highway Safety, and authorizing city to execute all necessary documents. And municipal order number 42-23, municipal order approving interlocal cooperation agreement between the Commonwealth of Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, Department of Kentucky State Police, and the Henderson Police Department to establish a Kentucky State Police Drug Task Force and authorizing Chief of Police and the Mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Before we get a motion, do we have any item on the consent agenda that a commissioner would like to be pulled off for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next, we have a second reading on an ordinance for alcoholic beverages.
Ordinance number 16-23, ordinance amending Chapter 4 alcoholic beverages. An ordinance amending Chapter 4 alcoholic beverages, Article 2 licenses, Section 4-40 conditions of license granted of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next, we have an ordinance amending, second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 16 for offenses.
Ordinance number 17-23, ordinance amending Chapter 16 offenses. An ordinance amending Chapter 16 offenses, Article 4, smoking in public places and places of employment, Section 16-56, where smoking not regulated, of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have two motions and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. And lastly, on the second readings, we have a zoning ordinance amendment for distilleries.
Ordinance number 18-23, ordinance amending Appendix A zoning. Ordinance amending Article 2 definitions, Section 2.01 definitions, and Article 20 CBD Central Business District, Section 20.03 conditional uses of Appendix A zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson to define and permit distilleries as a conditional use in the Central Business District.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a first reading for an ordinance amending job classification and pay plan.
Ordinance number 19-23, ordinance amending job classifications and pay plan. Ordinance amending job classifications and pay plan for certain hazardous duty positions and for certain non-hazardous duty positions and police hazardous duty positions.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a second? This is something that we've been discussing for a while. We've heard from our police chief for a while on the police hazardous duty changes. Does anyone have any questions or comments or suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have an ordinance amending budgeted positions of the fiscal year 2024 budget.
Ordinance number 20-23, ordinance amending a portion of City of Henderson fiscal year 2024 budget. Ordinance amending City of Henderson budgeted positions and job classifications of the 2023 through 2024 budget and appropriation ordinance for certain non-hazardous duty positions in the Parks and Recreation and Gas Departments.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Whitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor State.
Aye. Next, we have an ordinance providing for the levy and collection of taxes.
Ordinance number 21-23, ordinance providing for the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes. An ordinance of the City of Henderson, Kentucky, providing for the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, and providing for the time of payment for such taxes, penalty, interest, and discount.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Just want to point out before we vote that on our ad valorem taxes, there are 3 tax rates that we look at. One's for motor vehicle and watercraft. We are not legally allowed to change that here at the City Commission level, so that is remaining the same. One is for real property taxes, which impacts our homes. On the real property taxes, since 2017, we have cut those twice, and the other years we have kept them the same. This year, this particular ordinance is suggesting that we will keep them the same for another year. And then we also have what are labeled personal property taxes, which is the equivalent of a tangible property tax. That specific tax item on this year's budget calls for an 11.5% decrease in our tangible tax rate. Those are the 3 rates that we are indeed voting on. Does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions, concerns?
It's nice to not have to be in a position to raise taxes.
Right.
From 2002 to 2016, the real estate tax rate jumped 4%. Since then, it's come down 34% on today, so that's hopefully a meaningful amount at a time when people are incurring more costs everywhere else, that we can keep that consistent. It's nice.
Do you have any other comments? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Whitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor State.
Aye. Next up, we have a municipal order authorizing the purchase of 2 vehicles for the police department.
Municipal order number 43-23, municipal order authorizing purchase of 2 2024 Ford Explorer Interceptor, all-wheel drive vehicles by state contract from Frankfort Ford of Frankfort, Kentucky, and additional equipment to outfit each vehicle for the police department in the total purchase amount of $160,392 or $80,196 each.
Before we get a motion, Chief, can I put you on the spot and have you come up to the front, please? I just had a few
Sure.
questions for you.
Sure.
So if somebody's looking at the agenda, they are looking at 2 police vehicles that
Yes.
cost $160,000 plus.
Yes.
Can you explain to us why all of a sudden those seem to be more expensive than they did in the past as far as what we're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. The technology of the vehicles is a lot of it. The vehicle itself's about $44,000. The upfit, the lights, the siren, the cage, all the safety features for a police vehicle, that adds another $18,000. Then you have to go into the body worn system to put our cameras into the car. That's another $12,000. And then the computer itself is another $4,000 to $5,000. So the car itself is $45,000, but by the time we get done with it, they're up now, up to $80,000. When I hired in here recently and was doing the cars, I think they were City Manager, about 60?
And I think the other important thing in any previous approvals to purchase equipment, we were buying the cars only. They may have been partially equipped,
Yes.
but what happened out of his operating budget, the outfitting actually came out of a specific line item in the police department budget. So as the chief and I were talking to be more transparent as to the realistic cost of vehicles, we decided to consolidate everything into one number and make y'all aware of how expensive these vehicles are when you get done.
Thank you. I just wanted the rest of the commission to know that, the price hasn't gone from 45 to 80. We've just changed the way that we are accounting for them whenever we buy the vehicles.
Yeah, there's at least 20,000 that the city manager was speaking of that was wasn't on the front end. We would pick it up on the back end, and we just put it all together. So let's make what it is what it is, and that's what we're going to ask for.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Any question, can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Whitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor State.
Aye. Next up, we have a city manager's report.
I have two items today. One is a continuity of government plan in light of the natural disasters that we've seen across our country, and more close to home, the tornadoes that went through western Kentucky. A lot of lessons have been learned from those disasters, and we felt the need to put something more affirmative in a plan that would give not only this body, but city staff and management the ability to know what the plan is. So with that being said, I asked Sam Langerfeld to put this together, and we'll ask him to do a 10,000-foot overview of what that plan consists of.
Hi, good afternoon. As the city manager said, I'm Sam Lingerfeld. I'm the safety and training coordinator for the city. He asked me about, it's been a while ago, a couple of 6, 8 months, to put together a plan for the city in case we have some type of natural disaster, large disaster. So I've been working with our EMA director, Kenny Garrett, and we've been doing classes over the last 3 or 4 months to get our upper management staff a 10,000 foot view of what's going to happen when we have a disaster as part of the management, what other people's responsibilities are. So in crafting this plan, these are the highlights of it. It's a continuity plan for leadership at all levels of the city. So if the city manager's not here, who's in charge? It's the police department, fire department. So every department has 1 or 2, and sometimes 3 and 4 personnel that's going to take over in case somebody can't come in due to them having an emergency themselves, or their death, or they're out of town and can't get here. Because we want somebody in charge of those departments that's going to make those decisions. So in my plan, we have a command team, which is going to be the ones that manage the situation. There's 13 people assigned. I assign positions and not names, because when you assign names, every time somebody retires or moves on, you have to go back and update your plan. So I have the 13 positions. I have team leaders for damage assessment teams to go out and look at what we have and do damage assessments in accordance with the FEMA regulations. I have 7 team leaders. Debris management, where's this stuff going once we pick it up? There's 4 team leaders in that group. And documentation, which is a key part of FEMA for us to get any type of reimbursement. I selected 61 people within the city to attend this training that'll be coming later this year, once EMA gets it set up. So every department will have 1, 2, and possibly 3 people that know how to properly document what we use during a disaster, so we can get our money back sometime in the future for those events. We picked secondary locations for every department. So if the police station was compromised and we couldn't use it, they have a second location. Parks, every department has a second location to go to work out of if we do have this disaster. We have 2 staging areas. So, when people want to come help, we don't need them showing up in the middle of the problem. So we have 2 locations that we will put those people out to stage them, to keep them out of the way initially, and to control where they go to where they can do the most good. Also in the plan, we have the essential functions of every department during an emergency. Most of them are going to remain the same. There are some departments, their essential functions may change. For example, our finance department needs to still collect monies. We need money to operate, so they're going to still be in business. The police are still going to do their job. So we have a list of essential functions that will be done by each and every department. And then we have a designated debris storage sites. We got the team to help get it all managed and picked up, and now we have a place to go store it. And I have four sites selected within the city for that. The other things, such as, if we have a disaster, FEMA's going to send initially, almost immediately, 14 semis worth of stuff. So I worked with the EMA director. We have the college on board, so we're going to be signing an agreement with the college to be a collection point, distribution point, because we needed someplace that had a dock, they could pull the truck in, unload it, and get out. So the college has agreed to that. We're just going to try to finalize the paperwork, the agreement, and that's something being done through EMA. They're the ones that kind of oversee this whole program. The trainings, we've had 7 trainings so far at that 10,000 foot view. We've had city people, we've had water utility, we've had Hempel, and we've had county people all come to these last 7 meetings. We have one more left, which is going to be for some of the elected officials and for the PIO. That's coming in September. Then we will go into training for documentation teams, training for debris management. So everybody's going to have a role to play if we ever have something along this line. Once this document gets finished, approved, it's going on the city's intranet system so that all employees could be trained on it and kind of know what their part is in the problem, in the situation if we do have a disaster. Part of the plan, as any emergency plan, is you have to practice it. So we did have, with Kenny Garrett's help, we have a plan to do scenarios once a year. So once a year, we may take a group. Okay, this is what's going on. The city manager's not here, the police chief's not here, the fire chief's not here. We'll get their second, third line people, and we'll work through a scenario. Those will be tabletop exercises that's going to be ran at the MSC. So that's kind of the overall view of the plan. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more details about some things that we can do prior to and some things that we can do after the fact. Because if we do have a disaster, they seem to be more common every day. And we want, if we want to plan so that way, if we have something, when we recover from it, we're better than we were before it happened. So that's kind of what this plan is heading to.
Deal. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm just glad, we're being proactive because, like you said, we're not wishing on nothing, but we need something in place because I never thought what happened in Hawaii would have happened. So you need something, you never know.
And that's kind of why we decided, to have so many people be trained on the documentation part. The whole thing's important, but, getting the funding back at the end is what's going to either make or break the city. And if we don't have people trained on that, it's going to be could be a long, hard road for recovery without money.
I like the idea of us getting trained too.
Sorry, sir?
Yes, I like the idea of us getting trained.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that Hopkins County Judge Executive told me they had to borrow between $5 and $7 million to keep their operation going. And as of the last time I talked to him, reimbursement was slow in coming. So that is real money that it takes to keep the doors open and the lights on. So very critical.
So I will be sending all the elected officials the class that's coming up. If you want to attend, that's fine. We got plenty of room. It's about 2 hours, and it'll just kind of give you some insight of what you need to do as elected officials, because it's been a train derailment or in Hawaii, the elected officials are out talking, and there's a lot of things that you have to be aware of when you're speaking to the news media, so you don't say things you shouldn't or say the wrong things. So all that stuff will be covered in this training session that we're having coming up in September.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Sam.
Sir,
Appreciate it.
Next, I'd ask Dylan Ward to come and give a sports complex project review.
All right, I got a handout that I'm going to pass out. This sheet should look familiar to you. It's It's not the exact same one I gave you back in March, but it is very similar with a few changes. Here, I got one extra version. This one's a little updated. So my purpose in this presentation is really, I guess, threefold. And I'll make this fairly quick, but first, it's to give you an update on the cost, where we stand on that, an update on the schedule, and then also we would like to get some direction tonight on artificial turf. So basically, what you see in front of you, I'm just going to go over this real quick, is the same type of table that I showed you all about 5 months ago. So if y'all remember, our base bid right now is about $10.5 million, and so what you'll see. You've got the table at the top, which is the primary list of additions. You got the second table, which is the alternate list of additions, and then both of those numbers correspond down at the bottom under that base bid item. So basically, when we brought this to you all last time, we had a primary list of additions that we kind of were recommending to you all, and that price hasn't changed much. It went from 4.5 to 4.8 million. And this is where I want to take a second and pause and talk a little bit about the schedule and artificial turf. So when we had brought this to you initially, that 2.5 million, you see that second line where I say PR2 and PR7, artificial turf for 4 infields, 4 outfields, and one multi-purpose field. When we had brought this to you all initially, we were just proposing turfing the infields, not the outfields, and then one multi-purpose field. Well, now that we're in late August, we had to start talking about schedule. So things are progressing well out there. You know, we've had some delays with some of the storm drainage and some of the dirt work, and we've had to, with so much money that we're considering adding back in, it's kind of pushed our schedule out. And so really, the project will be done, next spring, summer, no problem. The problem becomes when we start talking about the appropriate time for grass to grow and take hold. So in the base bid, all of the fields were going to be Bermuda sod. The great thing about Bermuda is it's very hardy, it's very durable, but the best time to put Bermuda is in the summer. So with the way this project's shaping up, we're really going to miss the window this fall, and really even now would be, we're kind of pushing it to get that down, let it take hold, and be ready to grow in and play next spring or summer. So that gave us really one of two options. We could either look at a cool weather turf, which wasn't going to be as durable and it would require more maintenance. And then our contractor actually had the great suggestion, well, you've already turfed all the infield, you're already considering turfing all the infields, you're already considering turfing the first multi-purpose field, why don't you just turf the outfields as well? So, and by doing so, that would actually eliminate all the irrigation on that part of the property. So we would still need it if we add the 2 additional multi-purpose fields on the east, but basically it ended up with a huge credit. And so we went from basically 2.2 and some change to do the infields in one multi-purpose field to 2.5 and some change to do all of it, to do the 4 baseball fields, infield and outfield, and then one multi-purpose field. So that's the difference between the 4.5 I presented last time and the 4.8 I'm presenting now. There's an additional $300,000 in there basically to do the 4 outfields. So that's been the only change in that first group. The second group of items, we took the comments that you all had from the last meeting. And I should back up. So the great thing about going with artificial turf is if we do that, as soon as that's done, which would likely be early spring, you can get on and play it. So not only have you now, not only have you eliminated the scheduling issue, but you've also no mowing inside the fields. Like you'll still have the common areas. Like we could either do that on contract and it wouldn't take as much, fine tight mowing as what the actual playing surfaces will. You're also, eliminating rainouts because if we just went with the infields, you could still have a downpour in the outfields and it might not be ready. And then the artificial turf contractor was showing us an example of one facility, and if I'm not mistaken, he said that each one of their fields get up to 400 games a year. I'm not suggesting that we would get that much, but it could endure that much. So that's another huge positive. So I wanted to mention that before I got too far along. So going down to the second list, when we presented the primary list to you all at the last meeting in March, we heard that you all were really interested in the 2 multi-purpose grass fields, adding those back in, so you see that cost there. And my recommendation was, well, if you're going to add those fields, you've really got to add that parking because there was no parking on that side of the complex. So that paved is $1.4 million. And then the next 3 things, they were on this list previously, but I didn't really talk about them being added. Since then, we've gotten we haven't received the land and water grant since then, but since then we've found out more information about it. And basically, due to some stipulations of the grant, we're recommending that we go ahead and do the playground and the press box. So, and then I've added another 500,000 at the bottom for contingency, which is just a bunch of little things. So that number for the second group has actually gone down slightly because I removed, originally I had provided you all a price for an additional baseball field, a fifth baseball field. I've removed that and substituted that with the contingency. So the total for all those items is 3.2 million. So going down to the bottom, I'm going to talk through the budget a little bit, where we stand financially. And so ultimately, if there's one thing I can convey, it's this. Anytime we all ask you all, either formally or informally, to approve something or give us direction in purchasing something off this list, we want to give you the whole picture. You know, we don't want to just come to you and ask to fund the lights or fund the artificial turf and then bring $4 million to you, $4 million worth of things later, and you all say, well, we would have rather, funded that. So anytime we ask you all for permission to approve something, we want to show you the whole picture, if that makes sense. So if you go down to the bottom, you've got the base bid, which is about 10.5 million. The primary list of additions, which is the exact same total you see up at the top, is about 4.8, and then the alternate list of additions is 3.2. So you add all that together, and you're sitting about at 18.5. So then we'll start taking our credits out. So we already have a title sponsor for the sports complex at $500,000. We are projecting that we are going to be able to raise another $500,000, and this is just a guess, really, in naming rights and sponsorships for the field. So one thing that kind of a subgroup of us has been working on is working with ABBA to make us some promotional materials to basically try to obtain naming rights for the different things. So I've got a couple here. I'll just give them to you all. You all can look. But basically in there, there's a folder which basically just has pictures, kind of an eye catcher. There's an insert, which there would be a different insert for every different naming right opportunity. I think in here I have one for the baseball field and one for the soccer field. And then there's a pledge card. And so we've got some people who are working on this to see, if there might be interest in the community for naming rights. And so I'll just pass these around. These are just for you all. So that's where that other $500,000 number is coming from. And then we've got $200,000, which is already, that's already been an approved grant from Land and Water. And then based on the money that we had set aside from the bond that we issued in 2020, and then Buzzy and I have been working closely with Robert, our finance director, about the next bond to be issued this year. And when we look at the 15.5 that we're going to have available through that gets us down to 1.8. And so that's where we're at just with the revenue sources. And so I got a couple other notes there. We've been in communication with the county judge about, we're actually going to be on their agenda for the next meeting, the next fiscal court meeting, and talk to them to see if they would be willing to participate. I've had several communications with the judge, and he has been very gracious and has allowed us to come and present to the fiscal court on that. So that's one potential source. And then there's also other grants available. We've approved in the budget this year for a grant writer, and so there's a couple big grants that, if we could get, that would be helpful as well. And then I'll just kind of make a note in general that, some of in Buzzy and Robert's and I's conversations, revenues are a little up right now in certain areas, and so we're in a good financial position overall. And I'll let Robert say anything else in addition to that if he wants to, but I think it's doable. Basically, I think if you all wanted to do all this stuff, my main point is just to say it's doable. And so ultimately, what we're looking for is we're at the point now where we really need to make a decision about the artificial turf, and we weren't able. I just got the final numbers yesterday, so we weren't able to actually put it on the agenda. But I think, Buzzy, if I'm not mistaken, you wanted to actually do maybe like a informal vote of if they would be in favor of us bringing this as a formal change order at the next meeting.
Yes.
But by doing this, we could go ahead and at least give the contractor our intent. So what we would officially be asking for approval on at the next meeting would be that 2.5 million to proceed with the artificial turf, because we're at the point now where, whether you do natural grass or artificial turf, there's a difference in about a foot of dirt work. And so we got to know what to do with that dirt, whether we keep cutting or, stop where we're at. So,
Robert, do you mind to come up, please?
Yes, sir.
So I think the most important question of all, as we're looking at this list that includes a lot of our wish list for phase one and things like that, is we just went through an exercise about 15 minutes ago where we lowered one of our tax streams by 11.5%. And we've got this here that shows about 1.8 unfunded or underfunded. I think we'll probably be able to make up the difference, hopefully, with the county ask and with some other things. But in your opinion, based on where we're at today, can we afford it?
I think we can. We've been very good at controlling our expenses, especially what we have in debt. And we've got some debt that's rolling off in 2027, so that'll free up about $200,000 a year. And we've already built into our budget the bond that the board will be approving in the next couple of months. It's $13.2 million. That's going to be for the the balance of the sports complex plus the new project. So it'll about double what the city pays as far as debt each year. But what we have now is very manageable. It's right at $1,060,000 each year. So this will put it right at $2 million. But based on the revenue forecast that we have, both the insurance premium tax, the occupational tax, and even the changes that the board has approved for the payment of the taxes for the 3 utilities, we should have enough to pay this bond. Now, of course, we have the bond issue for the fire station that's coming up, and we'll have to address that at that time. But based on what Dylan and Mosey have been working on, I feel very comfortable we can afford this.
Robert, got a question, and correct me if I'm wrong. Even though we hadn't raised property taxes, the PVA did raise property values, which gave us some extra money that could help out with things that we're trying to finance. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it seems like everything's, well, Andrew, Mr. Powell said that the prices that people are paying for homes and businesses have gone up. And he's basing his assessments on those prices. So.
But we've been, is it fair, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but is it fair to say that, I mean, we've basically been budgeting for the sports complex now for about 3 or 4 years. And so the bonds that are coming up are what we had expected to come up.
Yes,
and that what we have also prepared ourselves financially to cover. And so there's not, the project itself is a large one, but it's one that we've been planning for a while, and we've budgeted around, and we've got the funds to complete adequately. In your opinion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Dylan, can you address, or if we turf everything, the maintenance on it?
Yeah, so, yeah, that is a good point. So actually, this 2.5 million comes with a groomer, or is that right? One of them. It's either, there's two pieces of equipment you need to maintain it. There's a groomer and a brush, and they provide one of them. We also, so I think back in March, we, as part of either a separate work session or the budget work session, we presented the operating budget for the sports complex, and that included an annual maintenance. Basically, they could come in if there was any damage to the turf. It was only a couple $1,000s a year, wasn't it, Mark? Yeah, and it might be a little bit more now that if we add additional turf, but it's basically where the supplier will come in and fix any damaged spots. And then there's other things you can do too, like in E-Town, for example, when we went and toured there, like in the batter's boxes, they don't actually have like permanent turf there. They have patches that you can remove and then replace, turn, flip, rotate, and that helps the weird spots. But yeah, it's Mark, you could probably speak a little bit more to the maintenance, because you actually went and visited Deaconess, didn't you? And what they did. But I mean, it seems pretty manageable. You have a bucket of we're using corn husk, which will be a lot cooler than the rubber, but you go out and you spread it, and depending on the field and what the issue is, there will be maintenance involved, but I think it'll be a lot easier for us to do than, if we actually had dirt in fields or dirt with grass in fields, so.
There's gonna be a lot less maintenance, for sure.
Well, and we've been over the numbers, but it's important to point out, if we don't turf the outfield versus if we do, it's a $300,000 difference. So they came back and said that it was going to be about $500,000 more, but we're going to give us a $200,000 credit. Is that right?
Yeah, they had their initial knee-jerk budget number was $500,000 more. He called me late yesterday morning and said, we talked to the president and they were able to knock off a couple $100,000. So I mean, for $300,000 more, it is really great. And the reason why it is so cheap is because now, whereas before you still had to run all those irrigation lines, through that area to get to the outfields. Now, there's no irrigation over there at all. And there was never going to be any irrigation like between the fields. It was only going to be on the playing surfaces themselves. So it was a huge save. I think on this they show a $950,000 credit for irrigation and sod. So
We're not irrigating, we don't have to mow it.
correct. So we'll only have to mow on the between the
Right.
fields, and you could contract that if we wanted to. We're still figuring that out.
And we traveled all over the tri-state when my son was younger. I don't remember anybody having a turf outfield.
Yeah,
If
but
you had a turf infield, it was something else. I mean,
yeah. And that's the one thing I will say is these will, I think, be really great because a lot of, and this is phase one, right? So these fields are going to be 200-foot fields. In the next phases, we've got larger fields planned. But in a lot of places, they build larger fields, have temporary fences, grass outfields. Well, because we're building these youth fields in the first place, we'll have permanent fencing and turf all the way to that permanent fencing, which will actually make ours some of the best youth fields. I mean, I don't know of another 200-foot purely turf with permanent fencing fields in this area. So
you won't find one.
yeah, so
They don't exist.
because they usually, yeah, exactly. So
And I think the other important thing, 300,000 is a lot of money, but if it gains a year of being able to go out and play on it, what's that worth? And,
Yeah.
Well,
it's
just-
kind of investment.
The mowing alone, what's that gonna be worth? You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From here on out. Yeah. No saccharine or whatever that is that soaks up the water when you
Yeah.
tinges rain. Yeah.
Can you mention, just while we're in this meeting too, about the turf itself? We had a question come up at a meeting earlier on this year with concerns about plastics
yeah,
and
PFAS.
and turf, but that's not the case with this kind of turf. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so, and Mark, if I forget something, you might help me out. But from what I understand, yeah, the question was raised about PFAS. And, when I first heard that, I thought, well, it's probably to do with the rubber. And so we went and checked with the manufacturer who will be providing it. And they said that they've had this question come up a lot, and they actually issued us a letter saying it's completely safe. One, because we're not using rubber, we're using coconut husks, which is more natural. And then two, they said that theirs is American made, and so part of the reason why other turf does get contaminated with PFAS is supposedly it's made in like a carpet factory sometimes, and apparently some carpets have PFAS in it, and so there's cross contamination. And that's what you get sometimes when you get an overseas type material. But since ours is 100% American made, so we've been told it's PFAS free, both in terms of the rubber, which we're not using because we're using coconut husks, and then the actual turf itself. So, and we actually got a letter from them several months ago addressing that. They said it comes up quite often, actually.
Good deal. So just a quick recap. So they are wanting to bring back the change orders and everything to us in September. And so they're wanting today for us to give a general consensus on where we're at. If we agree to this list of items in front of us, then we can just sort of give a head nod and let them know that that is what we want to consider. It doesn't lock us in on a vote, but that's what we would like to consider on voting on in September. If we vote on that in September, there's a fantastic chance that the facilities will be ready for the opening of season next year. So that's where we're at. If there aren't any more questions or comments, what I'd like to do is just go commissioner by commissioner and just ask where you're at on everything. And Commissioner Pruitt, you're first on the list at the moment. So where are you at in terms of?
$300,000, and when you look at all the stuff, the irrigation savings and a whole lot of other stuff, it's a no-brainer. I'm on board.
All right, Commissioner Witt.
A lot of money. But yeah, I mean, I think if we only did the first part, we wouldn't make it near as useful as it needs to be. So I think, if we're going to spend that kind of money, we need to spend the rest to try to make it as good as possible. So yeah, I would entertain a vote on it.
Well, and to your point, it's a difficult project when you're starting out because, the first several $1 million is to get the site ready. And so as you're adding stuff to your readied site, it becomes much more economical than, but in this phase, we're tackling everything, and it is expensive. You're exactly right. Commissioner Bowles.
Yeah, I agree with you all. It's, I think Commissioner Thomas said at the priority meeting at the beginning of the year that, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. And one of my big priorities was getting this done. And, I think everything on this list needs to be included. I like the playground area being added to it. I think that's a huge feature that'll be
In the park.
very utilized.
For the kids.
Yeah, so I'm on board with 100%.
Good deal. Commissioner Thomas, I probably don't need to ask, but
Yeah,
I will
you do not
anyway.
need to ask, you know I'm on board.
I do,
And here's the
so-
one thing we're forgetting is, it's gonna be a much faster surface, so it's gonna make our younger ball players so much better as they get older from youth. It's gonna make us a force in baseball later on when we get to high school.
Good deal. And I'm the same. I think that, I think it's reasonable to consider the stuff that we've got here. I think it's all paid for. At least for this first phase, we have got it all budgeted. There's not going to be a need to raise any additional taxes to fund what we have on this piece of paper in front of us. And so I like all of those things, and I think at the end of it, we're going to have a really nice first phase of a complex for our community to enjoy for decades to come. So I think we have our answer, sir.
All right, thank you all.
And we'll probably get some overflow from tournaments. Owensboro and Evansville definitely want to play over here,
Yep.
or I know the coaches will.
Yep.
I'd like to see the county chip in a significant.
Well,
Get to work
I
on
will
that,
say,
Dylan.
the fact that they're letting us come and at least ask for something, even though it's a city-led project, they've been very easy to work with over there at the county, and I appreciate it. And I know there's going to come a time where they are involved in something and they're going to ask for some reciprocation.
That's right.
And we're here to support each other and prop the community up, so. Anything else on the city manager's report?
None.
All right. We have anything else on the agenda today, Marie, that I may have missed?
No.
We're good? I'm going to start asking you every meeting. You keep me in line. Thank you. Commissioners' comments. Commissioner Pruitt.
Nothing.
Commissioner Witt.
Nothing today.
Commissioner Bowles.
Nothing tonight.
Commissioner Thomas.
Not a thing.
I do not have anything either, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right.
This motion, this